So Shauna is asking, what Bible translations do you use when you read the Bible? Also, what is your opinion on the Message Bible?
Jay, you want to go first on that?
Sure. I mean, I think naturally now the version I like reading first to begin with is probably the NIV, but then I like to have the NIV side by side, the King James version or New King James version. And then anytime I reach an interesting verse, I then click in the Blue Letter Bible app, this function that lets me look at all the translations. So I see how all of them are treating it. And then I like to, if there's a unique word in there that I'm really struggling with or trying to wonder, okay, what is that actual word? Not in English, but what is the Hebrew word or Greek word? Then I bring up the interlinear concordance and I look at, okay, yeah, what is that Greek word? So I like even going straight now more and more to the original Greek, original Hebrew manuscripts. So not even the translations, but those manuscripts. And I'm not trained in Spanish. Yeah. I'm not trained in Hebrew or Greek. I'm just like you, but with the power that we're afforded with the Blue Letter Bible app, and there's other apps as well that are doing it now, we have access to wealth of knowledge that we ourselves can be informed on these things and aren't restricted on just depending on what the translators did. And for the Message Bible, is that the one by Eugene Peterson?
I'm not sure, but I know that it's one that kind of tries to put things in like plain modern English for, kind of layman's terms.
Eugene Peterson. It is Eugene Peterson.
Okay. Sorry. I mean, my pastor quotes Eugene Peterson almost every single week. I mean, he's it's probably our pastor's most quoted person, probably. So I haven't read the Message Bible yet myself, but I respect my pastor quite a bit, and if he really likes the Message Bible to bring out important points, can't fault it.
I really want to emphasize just what Jay said about, reading different translations and really, if you can, going and looking at the interlinear concordance and looking at the original words that were used in the Greek or Hebrew and what those mean, because every translation has in it errors there, or like things that made sense that maybe at the time that it was translated, but doesn't mean the same thing to us today. And having that context from the concordance on what was this word and what were the different things that word meant or was used for, and how else has it been used in scripture, that gives a lot of extra context that really improves our understanding of what God was getting at here. And unfortunately, there've been a lot of kind of distortions that have come into the church over the years and come into church culture, Christianity as a whole, and are accepted as truth when they're not truth. And so taking the time to understand what scripture is really saying at a deeper level, and the context of the time it was written, the words that were used, the different uses of those words in other places, all of this gives a richness to scripture that we don't get when we just like read any one particular translation at face value, because face value, there's too much room for cherry picking and what's the word I'm looking for, when like you take something out of context, proof texting, way too much room for proof texting and not getting to the real essence of it. So
Gordon says,
and what was I going to say? Oh, real quick. And sorry, were you done?
I was just we had a comment too, but yeah, go ahead, Tina.
Just really quick. And I think I think that's important too. And I think it's also important to if when you study scripture, you study it in a way that makes sense to you, that you feel that God speaks to you. And I have to be honest, like, and I know I'm a little bit different than, my brother and sister here. Like, I'm a King James version person, but that's because that was the first Bible I read. And I know, it's not some people are so like King James and King James only. I'm not saying that, but I have to say, like, when I read the Bible, it makes the most sense to me for whatever reason. And so I usually tend to read that version first. And just because I like it, and I know it's like the old English, but so for some people, it's not beneficial. They need a different version, or they need to look at other things. But for me, like, that I feel very like comfortable with it, just because that's the version I read first, and because I read an old dictionary with it when I started studying my Bible, and I started looking up those old words and what they meant way back in the 1800s when, that version was written. And so I know like everybody's different. And so really, it's what works for you as far as, in your study of scripture. How do you feel like you're getting something out of it? Do you feel God speaking to you through this version? Like I said, for me, I'm a King James person. It speaks to me. It's that's where, like, if I go dig in my mind where a verse is at, I can understand it or remember it better from the King James Bible. But that's just because when it was translated, they made it with a cadence. There's actually a rhythm to that version of the Bible. So for whatever reason, I think it's my musical side of me that it resonates with. So I personally like that. But you're also asking about the Message Bible, and the Message Bible is an interesting version. I have read bits and pieces of the Message Bible, and it has some really beautiful things to help you understand it in a little bit more modern way. I think sometimes some passages are written kind of funny. I'm like, that's just like, it's almost like some things are kind of flipped. Like it's almost, to me, improper grammar, just the way that he writes it. But there's also things that he puts into it to make a verse a little bit more clear or more personable. And I think, like my brother and sister are saying, you need to look at, different versions and see what works best for you. How do you see or hear God's voice speaking to you, and whatever that version may be. But I think it has to be on an individual and prayerful decision.
Yeah.
Yep.
Never rely on one, but have as broad of a toolkit as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm with you on the Blue Letter Bible. I love the Blue Letter Bible. I go back to that all the time. Look up those Hebrew words because I'm like, this can't mean what I think it means. And yeah, there was like in the King James version. Can I just say this really quick? Oh, I hope I can pull up this verse. It's super cool. So I was reading the King James version a long time ago, and there was somebody said, "Oh, you have like there's a verse that says, if a lady was like a maiden was assaulted or raped, that she would be it was like a word that we would think meant beaten." And so people thought, oh, see, the Bible is saying that you're supposed to beat somebody, like a maiden who's been abused or sexually assaulted. And when you actually looked at that word back in the Hebrew, the word actually meant investigated. It was that the situation was supposed to be investigated. So it was actually, not that she didn't have rights and she was supposed to get abused further. It was rather that the situation was that she was supposed to be investigated because her rights were supposed to be upheld. And so again, what you guys are saying, it's so important. If you're a little bit confused about a verse and you're like that word, go to go to that Blue Letter Bible, look it up in Hebrew, and see if you can't find the real meaning of what's being said. So anyways.
Yeah.